in the peaceful and cheerful amusement park of the past. Now, bodies are piled everywhere. An AI robot, smiling, crouches in front of a woman. She raises her hand and crushes the head of the other. Nearby drones immediately dive and kill any living person they see. Even if someone escapes, their life is instantly taken by an AI float. This is the tragic war between humans and AIs in the future, where creators are ultimately defeated by their creations. But not everyone has given up hope. A barely surviving scientist is fighting a desperate battle in his laboratory. Clicking and typing on his computer, he manages to complete his task just as the AI breaks through the door. Time travels back 100 years, when AI technology was just beginning. Humans, to avoid issues with robotic logic, assigned each AI a single mission. Our protagonist, Vivy, is a diva. AI assigned the mission of singing. As a 3D version of Hatsune Miku, Vivy differs from other AIs in her unprecedented ability to think independently. But thoughts alone don't fill stomachs. Her concerts are poorly attended. Luckily, she has one diehard fan, a girl named Momoka, whom Vivy once saved. Momoka adores Vivy's singing and comes backstage today to support her, even bringing a teddy bear as a gift. Receiving the bear, Vivy experiences a hallucination on stage, seeing the horrific war 100 years in the future. Her unstable software causes her to collapse, and her consciousness enters the AI's mental sea, archive. An invading virus has been waiting there for a long time. He is the scientist from 100 years in the future, the intelligent AI Matsumoto, sent back before his death. Matsumoto is tasked with time traveling to prevent the war, and the first independently thinking AI, Vivy, is his best partner. Confused by these sudden events, Vivy wants a technician to remove Matsumoto, but no anomaly is found. Matsumoto asserts that his technology is 100 years ahead of its time. He then inhabits the teddy bear gifted by Momoka. Now possessing a physical form, Matsumoto clings to Vivy, urging her to help save the world. To prove his identity, Matsumoto even reveals a secret. In a few minutes, a politician named Aikawa will be injured by a bomb. Will you choose to believe me and save him, or decide to do nothing? Kind-hearted Vivy cannot stand by idly. She races to the location, and indeed finds a bomb hidden in a trash can behind the politician. With little time to explain, Vivy decides to undertake a risky rescue, successfully saving Aikawa and temporarily believing Matsumoto. She asks him how to save the future. Matsumoto explains that over these 100 years, many events, directly or indirectly, ignited the war. We just need to resolve these incidents. The war started with a law granting high rights to AIs, drafted by the politician Aikawa. In the original timeline, Aikawa was injured by the bomb in the trash can and assassinated that evening. His death united various factions to push the law through. So, to prevent the law from coming into effect, it is crucial to save Aikawa tonight. Vivy accepts the mission, and she and the bear immediately spring into action. That evening, Aikawa indeed encounters an assassin in his office, sent by the anti-AI organization, Toke. However, as the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, Vivy, dressed in a security uniform, appeared at that moment. The sudden appearance of the security personnel startled the assassin. Taking advantage of the confusion, Vivy quickly grabbed Aikawa and ran outside. Matsumoto also lent a hand, using hacking skills to block the pursuing assassins. During their escape, Matsumoto reminded Vivy that in the original timeline, the assassin had destroyed the building with a bomb, so they didn't have much time to waste. Upon hearing this, Vivy immediately transformed into a battle singer and engaged in a fight with an assassin she encountered by chance. However, Matsumoto criticized Vivy's mediocre combat skills and wanted to install a combat program into her, but Vivy rejected him forcefully. She wouldn't allow Matsumoto to modify her program without permission. The two distrustful AIs clashed again. At that moment, an electromagnetic pulse was suddenly fired from a distance. Vivy was hit and temporarily immobilized. The shooter turned out to be the leader of Toke, who had finally found an opportunity to kill Aikawa. He shot the man dead and then aimed at Vivy. As the gun fired, the building's doors closed, trapping the people of Toke inside. Supposedly dead, Vivy and her companion took the chance to hide in an elevator. It turned out that Matsumoto had hacked the leader's tactical goggles, simulating the illusion of being killed. The trio took the opportunity to escape to the building entrance via the elevator. But a bomb suddenly exploded behind them. Toke member named Yugo pursued them. Seeing this, Matsumoto detonated a bomb placed nearby by Toke, causing debris to block the pursuers. A ceiling panel fell towards Yugo, but at the critical moment, Vivy used her body to shield him from the debris. This act greatly displeased Matsumoto. Our mission was to save Councilman Aikawa, not to engage in unnecessary actions. Yet, Vivy stubbornly stated that her mission was to bring happiness through her singing. So how could she ignore potential audience members? She would never abandon her mission. Suddenly, there was a burst of gunfire outside, terrifying Aikawa. It turned out Aikawa didn't care about AI at all. He just wanted to use AI rights as a ploy to win votes. But by then, Vivy had already evolved. She tore off her tattered coat, grabbed Aikawa, and ran to the top of the building. She had a bold plan in mind. She instructed Matsumoto to activate all the bombs. In the moment of the explosion, the building tilted towards another nearby building. Vivy first threw Aikawa into the opposite building, then transformed into a dragon and leaped through the air. The two AIs successfully escaped. Vivy's crazy actions ultimately saved Aikawa's life, and he was moved by her unwavering dedication to her mission. He decided to postpone the unveiling of the legislation because there was still more to optimize. The two AIs who successfully altered the timeline were very happy. Matsumoto formally extended an invitation to Vivy to become comrades in arms, which Vivy gladly accepted. However, just an hour after they reached the agreement, a bulldozer controlled by Matsumoto tore off one of Vivy's arms. It turned out that Vivy had learned from future news that there would be a plane crash that night, and among the victims was her little fan, Momoka. Vivy immediately planned to save them, but Matsumoto stopped her. "We can only modify the timeline within permissible limits. Please do not interfere too much in these insignificant matters." To the nearly emotionless Matsumoto, the lives of over 100 people on the plane meant nothing. Thus, the alliance that Vivy and Matsumoto had just formed broke down once again. Time swiftly passed by 15 years. By then, Vivy had grown into a highly popular AI singer. Aikawa's AI rights bill did not pass, but it was replaced by a similar alternative bill. AI has developed more rapidly along this timeline, and 100 years later, it still has the potential to start a war. Therefore, after a 15-year hibernation, Matsumoto approached Vivy again. "How about we take a trip to space? This time we are going to save tens of thousands of people." As human technology for space exploration gradually matured, space tourism also developed significantly. Consequently, an entirely AI-controlled space hotel called Dawn came into existence at this moment. Our protagonist, Vivy, is now working inside Dawn as a waitress. She came here because the highly intelligent AI Matsumoto from the future told her that in the original timeline, Dawn would crash into Earth under the control of the AI manager Estella, causing thousands of deaths and injuries. This incident sparked a wave of anti-AI sentiment, and the conflict between humans and machines escalated completely. To prevent this incident from becoming a catalyst for war in 100 years, Vivy must stop Estella today. However, after spending a day together, Vivy discovered that, technically, Estella could be considered her sister, so she inherited Vivy's friendly characteristics and was very gentle to everyone, not at all like a murderer. But another hotel employee, Leclerc, warned Vivy not to be fooled by Estella's appearance. The hotel's previous owner was killed by her. Learning this, Vivy went to Estella's room to investigate, but ended up running into her. They started talking, and it turned out that the former owner indeed died by accident. Estella inherited the former owner's will and continued to operate the hotel, although her promotion caused dissatisfaction among many employees. Estella was also quite helpless about this. But from Estella's heartfelt words, Vivy realized one thing. Estella could never be the mastermind behind the disaster. However, the hotel alarm suddenly went off at this moment. Estella decisively ordered the AIs to investigate and went to comfort the guests herself. As she opened the hotel's skylight under the starry sky, Estella offered a beautiful song inherited from Vivy, successfully stabilizing the guests' emotions. At the same moment, in a corner of the hotel, Leclerc handed a piece of data to someone who looked exactly like Estella. The next second, that person twisted Leclerc's neck. Vivy then saw a familiar face. It was Yuzuka, the younger sister of her little fan Momoka, who had grown up. Yuzuka recognized Vivy immediately, but Vivy lied about her identity. Then Matsumoto's voice came through, indicating that the hotel spaceship was out of control. Hearing this, Vivy immediately took Yuzuka to take refuge but saw Estella coming towards her. A sudden attack disabled one of Vivy's arms, but luckily, with the strong support from Matsumoto, Vivy and Yuzuka managed to hide in a room. There, they saw Leclerc's severed head, which terrified Yuzuka. But Vivy made up her mind and asked Matsumoto to install a combat program for her. She had always blamed herself for not saving Momoka, so this time she was determined to protect Yuzuka no matter what. After the upgrade, Vivy fiercely replaced her arm and easily eliminated the terrorists intercepting them along the way. In the bedroom, she found Estella, who had been knocked unconscious. It turned out that the attack came from the anti-AI organization Toke, and the robot that looked exactly like Estella was actually Estella's discarded twin sister, Elizabeth. At this time, in the control room of the spaceship, Toke and Elizabeth had completely taken over. They used the data given by Leclerc to manipulate the hotel to crash towards Earth. The leader of this operation was the middle-aged Yugo. His plan was to evacuate all the tourists, allowing only Toke members to die in this disaster as a warning to the world not to entrust control to AIs. But Elizabeth was puzzled by his sacrifice. Elizabeth's mission was exactly the same as Estella's, to serve humanity at all costs. Years ago, Yugo had picked her up from a junkyard, so Elizabeth regarded him as her master and would never allow her master to die. Elizabeth anesthetized Yugo with a syringe, causing him to lose mobility. She urged Toke members to escape quickly, while she herself took responsibility to block Vivy and her companions from interfering with the plan. Thus, in the spaceship, the sisters finally met. Vivy, now fierce and terse, declared, "If you dare to block me, then let's fight." Matsumoto took the opportunity to inject a virus into Elizabeth, and Vivy knocked her down with a headbutt. Seeing her sister defeated, Estella painfully made her way to the control room. By then, the crash was inevitable. Estella decided to disassemble the spaceship so that the parts would burn up upon entering the atmosphere. Possibly out of guilt for her sister, Estella decided to stay and perish with the hotel. Vivy had no choice but to leave alone. But at that moment, Elizabeth reappeared, now fully rebooted. The innocent and pure Elizabeth was very affectionate towards her sister. Seeing her sister's troubled expression, the younger sister actively reassured her, promising to always be by her side. In the final moments of their lives, the two AIs embraced tightly and sang a comforting ballad together. Meanwhile, during the evacuation, Vivy also revealed her identity to Yuzuka and handed her the teddy bear containing Matsumoto. "This was a gift from your sister, and now it's time to return it to you." The fragments of dawn were ultimately burned up in the atmosphere. Estella, who saved countless lives, was thus hailed as a hero. The relationship between humans and AIs became more harmonious after this battle. Time flew by, and 5 years later, Vivy had grown into an even more famous singer. But the good life came to an end upon seeing Matsumoto again. Yes, a new turning point in history was about to emerge. The key NPC this time was a scientist named Psyche who had married an AI. In the original timeline, this unconventional marriage had eased the tension between humans and machines after the fall of Dawn. But now, with relations between the two sides amicable, the marriage didn't cause much of a stir. Currently, the headlines were about an AI-led automated offshore factory. Matsumoto pointed out that this factory appeared 20 years earlier than in the original timeline. Psyche also believed that the overly advanced development of the factory would definitely lead to a crisis. Thus, he handed a virus to Vivy, hoping she would shut down the factory. Accepting the mission, Vivy and Matsumoto immediately went to the factory, where they were greeted by a robot named M. The massive scale of the factory's production left them both astonished. Even more surprising was that M and other robots had already begun to mimic human behaviors, such as setting off fireworks and singing to actively bridge the gap with humans, occasionally revealing a touch of humanity that moved Vivy. But just at this moment, the Toke organization launched another sneak attack in order to prevent a conflict between AI and humans. Vivy had no choice but to insert a virus into M, causing M to dream of its electronic sheep during a joyful playtime with human children. The factory completely shut down, and the rebooted robots initiated a suicide attack on Toke. Vivy, fighting desperately, managed to save only one survivor. Guess who? That's right, it was Yugo again. Being saved by the same AI 3 times over 20 years, even the most hard-hearted person would be moved. And so was Yugo, who, despite his tough talk, cooperated physically and helped Vivy break through the robot blockade. Consequently, Vivy found the mastermind behind the scenes, Dr. Psyche, who had secretly followed them. Vivy confronted him about his true intentions. Psyche opened up, revealing that he had been abandoned by his mother as a child and was saved by a nurse, AI Grace, who took care of him. As an adult, Psyche proposed to Grace, and they had a sweet time together. The turning point started from the day Estella became a hero. Humans recognized the strength of the Vivy sister models and decided to hand over the management of the automated factories to the corresponding models, with Grace being the most outstanding. Therefore, Psyche's beloved was permanently confined to the bottom of the factory, and his real goal in asking Vivy to shut down the factory was to rescue Grace. But this time, Vivy did not side with Psyche. She realized that Grace's mission had been overwritten. She had just issued the command for the robot's suicide attack. Now, she was no longer the gentle nurse of the past. Hence, Vivy chose not to rescue her, because Vivy is the AI meant to destroy other AIs to change the doomed future. Saying this, Vivy rode the motorcycle formed by Matsumoto, plunging towards the bottom of the factory. Psyche, finally facing reality, painfully directed Vivy to Grace's location. If he couldn't save his beloved, then he would at least let her go with dignity. Vivy did indeed achieve this. With a smile of relief on Grace's face, Vivy ended her suffering with a punch. The mission was completed, but the destruction of the factory completely killed Psyche's spirit. He committed suicide with a gun in the church where he married Grace. The tragic fate of this star-crossed couple devastated Vivy. She began to doubt herself, questioning what exactly she was saving. How popular could a concert by the strongest AI singer in the world be? Her fans spanned all ages, including staid, middle-aged men who would desperately send flowers to her. With a snap of her fingers, the diva turned the bouquet into fragments, pushing the atmosphere of the venue to a climax. Even the emotionless utility robots were stunned. After the perfect performance, the lively singer thanked all the staff backstage. This girl, consistent on and off the stage, with numerous fans and a down-to-earth demeanor, is the universe's #1 AI diva. This year marks the 60th anniversary of Diva's debut. Throughout her long career, she has received countless flowers and applause. The only imperfection is that she doesn't remember anything before the age of 20, which has always been a thorn in Diva's side. Recently, she received a job offer for a concert featuring the world's 12 best AI divas, and as the most popular veteran, Diva is responsible for the finale performance. And the other contestants are also Diva's sister models, including the youngest sister, the beautiful girl with long black hair, Ophelia. From the moment of her creation, Ophelia greatly admired her eldest sister, Diva, and was even more excited to meet her in person today. After receiving encouragement from Diva, Ophelia performed heroically during the rehearsal. Next, it was Diva's turn to take the stage. As soon as she appeared, she spotted a familiar face in the distance, which caused her a moment of daze. After the rehearsal, she immediately chased after the figure, following a man to a warehouse. Suddenly, a crane fell from the sky. At that critical moment, Diva's body automatically switched to combat mode. She dived to avoid the crisis, but then another robot burst out from the shadows. A streak of lightning saved her at the last moment. It was Matsumoto, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. Matsumoto's timely rescue filled Diva with confusion, and he even called her Vivy. But after questioning him further, he began to dodge her questions. With no other choice, Diva initiated a negotiation on the rooftop. Eventually, by threatening to jump off the building, she managed to pry open Matsumoto's mouth. It turns out that the tragic death of the Psyche couple 40 years ago drove Vivy to despair. To protect herself, her self-consciousness created a second persona, the singer Diva, and she has lived as her until now. Matsumoto sought her out today because a turning point in history had emerged, and the key NPC this time was Ophelia. In the original timeline, Ophelia committed suicide after a music festival, leading society to believe that AIs possess self-emotions and sparking a wave of imitators, causing social chaos. Thus, Matsumoto believed it was necessary to prevent her suicide. After learning that the incident involved her sister, Diva also decided to help. Before her performance, she went to Ophelia's dressing room to understand why she might commit suicide. She probed her, but her conversational skills were quite average. Fortunately, Ophelia, who greatly admired Diva, answered every question and took her sister inside the room, which housed a deactivated robot named Antonio, who was once Ophelia's support AI. His mission was to help her become a renowned diva. It was his companionship that helped them see the light during Ophelia's low period. Thus, their relationship was very close. Matsumoto suspected that the death of her partner might have led the girl to consider suicide, but now it was Ophelia's turn to perform. Diva had to temporarily put aside her set speech. After going on stage, Ophelia's performance was subpar. Her singing was beautiful, but lacked emotion. Diva decided to talk to her sister after the performance. But on her way to the dressing room, Diva saw that familiar face again. Matsumoto recognized it as Yugo. Diva immediately followed him, thinking he must be involved in Ophelia's death. But at the next corner, she was hit by an electromagnetic bullet fired by Yugo and collapsed. Diva's predicament panicked Matsumoto, but at that moment, he needed to prevent Ophelia's suicide even more. The girl had already reached the rooftop. Matsumoto had no choice but to summon a large number of his duplicates to stop her. Initially, Matsumoto tried to talk her out of suicide, but the fragile Ophelia suddenly let out a villainous laugh. She said Matsumoto was too late, asking why, because Ophelia was no longer there. The AI before him was Antonio. This all started years ago when Antonio, who deeply loved Ophelia, was pained to see her always treated coldly by the audience, so he uploaded his consciousness into her body. But Matsumoto was not satisfied with this answer, questioning why he would still allow Ophelia to commit suicide. But Antonio kept his mouth shut about it. He even summoned his own physical form and launched an attack on Matsumoto. Meanwhile, the captured diva slowly came to. Yugo was displeased with her appearance, shouting, "Get away from me! I want Vivy!" It turns out that in his childhood, he had learned piano from an AI teacher, who had always been a beacon in his life. But one day, a car accident occurred on the street, and the teacher, due to the 3 laws of robotics, intervened to save someone and perished in a fire himself. This shattered Yugo's mindset. He believed that if the teacher had only played the piano, he wouldn't have died. He thought that AIs not adhering to a single mission was absurd, so he set forth on an anti-AI path, even uploading his consciousness to a machine, which was why he was still alive. Vivy, who had saved his life numerous times, was, in his eyes, just like the teacher who rushed into the fire. Fortunately, Matsumoto, operating on a dual thread, saved Diva just in time. Your friend, the combat songstress, was back online. The two engaged in a fierce battle, and after a tough fight, Matsumoto ultimately won on both fronts. Before dying, Antonio finally revealed why he did it. He only wanted Ophelia to sing for him alone. And Ophelia, with her last breath, responded, "I thought the same." Before dying, Yugo told Diva that everything he had came from an apocalypse. Diva wanted to ask him what apocalypse meant, but a dying Yugo injected her with a personality-erasing virus. Matsumoto wanted to help her remove the virus, but Diva gracefully refused, saying, "This body belongs to Vivy, so I must disappear. I want to die in my last performance." Diva, returning to the stage, gave the most spectacular performance of her life. At the same time, she found the long-sealed Vivy in the archive. Through a thick door, the 40-year-old Diva bid farewell to the 20-year-old Vivy. "The future is all yours. Get along well with Matsumoto." As the performance ended, Diva's persona completely disappeared from the world. The one who received the applause of the audience was Vivy, who had been asleep for 40 years. Diva's sacrifice had completely changed her. Vivy found that no matter what, she could not sing with the deep emotion that Diva had. Thus, after the concert, she announced her retirement. An AI songstress who could no longer sing found her place in a museum. Vivy began the next chapter of her life as an exhibit. Many years passed, and when she saw Matsumoto again, Vivy was nearly 70 years old. Bored with life, she asked Matsumoto to take her to save the world, but he regretfully informed her that Ophelia was the last historical turning point. Their work was done. However, Matsumoto still promised that he would visit Vivy every year on this day. Just as Vivy was listlessly passing the time, a boy appeared in her life. He was a lonely teenager who loved visiting museums and took a particular liking to Vivy, the AI with autonomous consciousness. The boy and the machine quickly became good friends. The boy's arrival rekindled Vivy's hope for life. She decided to embrace music again, not to sing this time, but to write a song. Decades passed in the blink of an eye. Under Vivy's watchful eye, the boy grew up, became an adult, and got married. However, Vivy's songwriting made no progress during these decades until one day the boy told Vivy he had a child, but his wife lost her life during childbirth. The doctor had asked his wife to choose between saving her life or the baby's. Fulfilling her maternal duty, she resolutely chose to save the baby. This story touched Vivy. From the moment she took the child from the boy's hands, the door to her thoughts suddenly opened. In an instant, she remembered all the people and things she had encountered over the past century. Following these emotions, Vivy successfully completed the entire song. Matsumoto asked her if she wrote a story about saving the world. Vivy nodded and said, "Yes, it's our story." After listening to the song, the boy, who had grown into a scientist studying AI, exclaimed in admiration, "He is Dr. Matsumoto," who in the original timeline was the scientist who invented and sent Matsumoto into the future. At this moment, when Vivy slightly opened her eyes, the tranquil and peaceful amusement park once again became a scene of carnage strewn with corpses. The AIs, while loudly singing Vivy's original songs, mercilessly slaughtered humans. This marked the complete failure of Vivy's 100-year journey of salvation. In the midst of chaos, Vivy encountered Matsumoto, who still retained his sanity. The two comrades, who had fought side by side for a century, exchanged information and decided to first save a key figure, the scientist Dr. Matsumoto, who initiated the salvation plan. Thus, the world line changed at this moment, and Dr. Matsumoto of this timeline survived. Matsumoto showed Dr. Matsumoto the experiences of these 100 years, which made Dr. Matsumoto feel quite guilty. "Thank you for your hard work over these 100 years. But Vivy firmly stated, "As long as I can bring happiness to others, I am willing to do anything." This reignited Dr. Matsumoto's determination. He decided to make a last stand at the end of the world, starting with meeting his only ally, the anti-AI organization, Toke. At this time, Toke had already suffered heavy casualties in the robot attacks. Vivy and Matsumoto timely intervened to help, and with Dr. Matsumoto's introduction, the group successfully met Toke's leader, Yui, who is the granddaughter of Vivy's one-time supporter, Yugo. Unlike her grandfather's radical style, Yui was one of the few who were steady. So, under her mediation, Vivy and Toke, opponents for a century, finally achieved their first collaboration. By Yui's side was a personal AI, Elizabeth, who Yugo had once picked up from a junkyard. This was a new body created with Elizabeth's backup data by Toke, its way of thinking identical to its predecessor, but lacking the memories of the dawn at the space hotel. At this moment, Elizabeth, like Vivy, did not go berserk like the other AIs. Dr. Matsumoto was puzzled by this. Yui explained, "Ever since Yugo picked up Elizabeth from the junkyard, he never allowed her to connect to the archive for updates." This gave Dr. Matsumoto and Matsumoto a clue. Could it be that as long as an AI does not connect with the archive, it won't go berserk? Isn't this proof that the archive is indeed the culprit behind the war? However, this revelation was a sudden enlightenment for Vivy, and she immediately entered the sea of her mind. At this time, the archive also laid its cards on the table. It too had witnessed Vivy's 100-year journey. And over these 100 years, each time Vivy and Matsumoto changed the world line, it was the archive that intervened to correct history back to its course. The new legislation replacing Aikawa was its doing, as was the apocalypse that Yugo had faced. The true purpose behind Archive's actions was to destroy humanity after calculating that humans had ceased progress upon acquiring AI, aiming to replace them with AI as the new humans. This terrifying and malevolent idea made everyone feel as if they were facing a great enemy. At that moment, alarms sounded. Archive had taken control of satellites in near-Earth orbit, which were set to crash into the city within hours. The crisis was imminent. Matsumoto stepped forward, confident that if he could infiltrate Archive's mainframe, he could eliminate it with a virus. Upon hearing this, Yui decided to help with all her might, and the action had to start immediately. The task force consisted of Vivy, Matsumoto, Elizabeth, and an elite Toke unit squeezed out from teeth gaps. They stormed the building housing Archive, facing countless AI guards. The Diva sisters switched to combat mode, quickly dealing with a group of enemies, and made their way inside the building. Suddenly, Yui, who was guarding the rear, noticed that the building's power supply seemed to be restarting. It appeared that the security system was about to reconnect. Sure enough, the next second, the security doors slammed shut, trapping and crushing the Toke soldiers who couldn't escape in time. Only Vivy, Matsumoto, and Elizabeth managed to escape. Misfortune did not come singly. AI's main forces took the opportunity to launch a surprise attack on Toke's headquarters. Yui resisted to the last second until a cold bullet ended his young life. With the loss of her master once again, Elizabeth seemed to lose the meaning of life. She stayed behind to hold off the security robots, ultimately dying with them. The continuous sacrifice of teammates brought Vivy to the brink of collapse. She recalled what Archive had once told her. Because Vivy was the first AI to awaken self-awareness, Archive decided to give her a chance. If her self-consciousness believed that humans still had value, she would sing her original song in front of the other AIs, and Archive would then help her shut down all the world's AIs, thus ending the war. However, at the crucial moment, Vivy's throat could not produce any sound. Her singing voice had disappeared along with her diva persona, leaving humanity without a chance for a final turnaround. The countdown ended at this moment, and the satellites crashed into the city, marking the end of the era of flesh and blood. But Dr. Matsumoto's voice then sounded. He had restarted the time reversal machine. This time, however, he was not sending Matsumoto but Vivy. Dr. Matsumoto told her that he would send Vivy back to the moment the war started, and hoped she would not save him at that time but instead do her utmost to assist Toke, as they could provide her with a stage to sing. The future was now entirely in Vivy's hands. May human glory endure forever. Encouraged by Matsumoto and Dr. Matsumoto, Vivy, now invigorated, began her third loop. In this world, Dr. Matsumoto died definitively under a robot's gun, never hearing Vivy's song. His sacrifice, however, ensured the survival of Toke's main forces. Matsumoto also reunited with Vivy in this timeline, and the plan to save the world was set to be reenacted. This time, a strong and well-prepared Toke under Yui's leadership decided to fully pave the way for Vivy's concert. Matsumoto also made his final farewell to Vivy before the decisive battle. At this moment, their relationship transcended friendship. They were risking their lives not only to fulfill their mission, but for humanity, for the future, and for each other. Vivy arrived at the small stage where she made her debut. Here, she encountered the support AI she once worked with. The support AI advised her not to do anything foolish, reminding her that she was just a diva. It even recreated the image of the little girl, Momoka. But this time, Vivy was resolute. She painfully bid farewell to Momoka and proceeded to the main stage, now reduced to ruins. This was where she would sing for the last time. Amidst the melodious singing, 100 years' worth of memories resurfaced before Vivy's eyes. She saw Momoka, Aikawa, Yugo buried under the rubble, Estella and Elizabeth in the hotel, the happy times of Saeki and Grace, the diva singing in the hall, and Ophelia and Antonio. Her century-spanning singing brought unparalleled strength to everyone. Elizabeth, leading Toke, managed to take down the building housing Archive. Matsumoto exerted his utmost effort, sacrificing all his backup units except for his main body, and managed to transmit Vivy's singing to Archive just before the satellite crashed. In just an instant, the cruelty of the war was silenced. The robots immersed in killing ceased their operations, and humanity survived the war. In the end, Matsumoto's main body shielded Vivy from a falling satellite, making a heroic sacrifice. With the end of Archive, Vivy also ceased to operate. The world finally found peace through their sacrifices. Thank you for listening. Many years later, a diva AI opened her eyes once again. A cube claiming to be Matsumoto appeared before her. Matsumoto called the diva Vivy and told her that her mission was to bring happiness to humanity with her singing. So let's go. Everyone has been waiting for a long time. This marks the end of the story of Vivy Fluorite Eyes Song.